son was growing up, I would always insist that he try something that I was cooking before he told me that he didn't like it. Often, to soothe his concerns, I would tell him that there was nothing in my new dish that he would not like. I told him that because I wanted to plant the seed or the expectation that he would like it. I also wanted to plant the seed that we need to try something before we announce that we don't like it. That's the way it is with us. We experience the world through our expectations. Well, adults do, with the expectations that we learned when we were children. Expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. And in one sense, what we expect, our belief in what will happen, is likely to determine what will happen. Throughout time, philosophers have said, we see things not as they are, but as we are ourselves. The dog owner in our ridiculous story sees the dog for its one mistake, not the whole of the experience of sending the dog to the butcher shop. Undoubtedly, this is the way the man was treated. This is what the man has become. How many of us count our mistakes rather than counting our successes? How many of us judge ourselves by how we think others perceive us? How many of us are actually aware of our unconscious expectations that guide each and every moment? We see things not as they are, but as we are ourselves. There's a painting called Landscape with the Fall of Icarus that makes this point. It is a large painting from the 1560s that hangs in Belgium's largest museum, the Musée des Beaux-Arts. And it is said to be a meticulous copy of an original, now lost, work of Flemish artist Peter Bruegel the Elder. This painting shows a superficial, bucolic, and beautiful scene. Ships are taking sail, a shepherd is tending to his flock, distant cities look prosperous and ordered. A man in the center of the painting is tilling his field. And in the bottom corner, right-hand corner of the canvas, a tragedy is unfolding, but nobody notices. There, in the corner, is Icarus, the legendary figure from classical mythology, the son who, with his father Daedalus, has made himself a pair of wings glued together with wax. Daedalus had warned his son not to fly too close to the sun because it would melt the structure. But the impetuous boy has soared too high, too close to the sun, and in the painting has just tumbled down into the waves and is drowning. Icarus's death is deliberately not the central focus of the painting. You might miss it entirely without the title to alert you. Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. The eye is drawn instead to the glittering cities, the smart ships in the distance, and the work of the farmer, the shepherd, and the fisherman. What the painter is trying to show us is that we are often consumed with our lives and don't notice when others falter and make a mistake. What seems large and embarrassing to us often goes unnoticed by others. As a singer, I know that when I make a mistake and sing the lyrics out of order, most people don't notice. Most people don't notice our actions and flaws in quite the way we do. They have their own expectations that are ruling their lives. Expectations are powerful forces. And we have developed these expectations as children growing up in our families. Did we receive the message like the dog? That no matter how amazing we are, all is lost when we make a mistake? We see things not as they are, but as we are ourselves. Do we see our mistakes as the end of the world, very large and creating a space that we cannot recover from? We see things as they are. And not as they are, but as we are ourselves. This reference has been used throughout time. It is thought to be part of the Talmud, the commentary written by the early Jewish rabbis. And there are numerous references through early 19th century writing. It appears in contemporary writing as well. The 1991 edition of the famous self-help book, Think and Grow Rich, included an instance of this maxim. To put it plainly, seeing is not believing, believing is seeing. We see things not as they are, but as we are ourselves. Our perception is shaped by our previous experiences. The best-selling self-help volume, The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, includes this instance. Each of us tends to think we see things as they are, that we are objective, but this is not the case. We see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we are conditioned to see it. When we open our mouths to describe what we see, we, in effect, describe ourselves, our perceptions, our paradigms. We see things not as they are, but as we are. And while we see things not as they are, but as we are, I wonder what happens when we open ourselves to imagine something different. Let us take a moment to ponder that thought. nor folks with empty hands. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. We see the world not as it is, rather how we are. What do you imagine? Is there a way that you can stretch your mind? What do we imagine that breaks through our expectation? In his book, Reboot, Leadership and the Art of Growing Up, Buddhist CEO coach Jerry Colonna encourages his readers to sort through the baggage that they have been carrying since childhood. He says that this baggage or expectations are our own particular habits of mind, the experience, patterns, and belief that has led us to seek safety and solace in our own particular way. He encourages us to take inventory and begin sorting it out. There is no place to hide, he says. He uses the metaphor of photography and filming in this reflection. When I was in high school, I studied photography and filmmaking. I remained fascinated by the fact that film is deceptive. What appears fluid, ongoing, and always in motion is, in fact, a series of still moments viewed incredibly quickly, just like life itself. What appears fluid is 24 frames per second. 24 precious moments per second, lived second after second after second. And each of those still moments is imbued with feelings and memories. The rapid fluidity of each of these moments defines the patterns and beliefs that in turn define our lives. Ghosts of the past, our grandparents and their grandparents as well, the ghosts of their lives inhabit these frames. They and their beliefs, interpretations of scenes, words, and feelings haunt the frames of our lives. Slowing down the movie, he says, seeing the frames and how they are constructed reveals a different way to live, a way to break old patterns, to see new experiences anew through radical self-inquiry. In our context today, slowing down the movie of our lives, seeing the frames and how they are constructed, reveals the expectations that we live with, that we quite frankly expect, and that we bring into fruition with our interpretation of each and every moment. Examining what it means to be a people of expectation requires knowing how what happens to us influences the choices that we made and continue to make. We are complicit in creating the conditions of our lives and the instances that we do not want. We see the world not as it is, but rather how we are. And while the journey is arduous, Self-discovery is never easy. When we move with this radical self-inquiry, we don't lose ourselves. We lose our expectations and become more like ourselves, more authentic, more human. The goal then is to begin to know the why of your life and become the adult, the full human being you were meant to be. There is a story told of Milarepa, the great Buddhist sage and teacher, that can give us some insight on the path to examining our expectations and breaking through to radical self-discovery. It is said that one day he left his meditation cave to gather firewood. When he returned, the cave was filled with demons. You might think of them like kind of bats that are flying around, making a nuisance of themselves. Unsure of what to do, Milarepa begins waving his arms at them, trying to get them to leave the cave so that he can go back to his meditation in peace. But they don't leave. Instead, they multiply. So Milarepa becomes very clever. He says to himself, I will teach them the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. And the demons all quiet down and are still. But Milarepa notices that while the demons are quiet, they haven't left, and their numbers haven't diminished. Becoming slightly wise and mildly more adult, he asks the demons, what are you here to teach me? And one by one, the demons disappear. Pleased with himself, Milarepa goes back to his meditation, but realizes that there's one demon remaining. A big, hairy, blood-curdling demon with big green eyes and bloody fangs. Shaking, terrified, Milarepa puts his head into the mouth of the demon and says, eat me if you wish. With that, the demon vanishes. Our story reminds us that rather than impose our will on our expectations, we need to examine them and ask ourselves, what does this expectation have to teach me about its origin? Make no mistake, we are a people of expectation. We see the world not as it is, but as we are. And as we move into a discipline of radical self-inquiry, we can acknowledge how we contribute to the problem without descending into pointless self-flagellation. At that moment of self-discovery, we unleash a power of transformation, of alchemy. We defeat or cause to disappear the expectations that limit our vision and our choices. We begin to imagine a world that is different. We develop a sense of wonder and appreciation for the amazing feats that we pull off, even as we forget our keys. The Gospel of Thomas tells us, if you bring forth what is in you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is in you will destroy you. We see the world not as it is, but rather how we are. Our world needs us to examine how we are a people of expectation. Our world needs us to examine our expectations ask them what they have to teach us, and to learn from what the examination tells us. Our world needs us to become fully actualized. Now, it's going to take some experimentation. There may be missteps. Take heed of the admonishments of others like Daedalus to his son, and take solace that no one is watching you like you are watching yourself. And watch yourself you must. Delve deeply. And together, always, as a people who have examined our expectations, let us imagine a world where we cross boundaries, those boundaries of expectation, and, as John Lennon advocates, live as one. Flawed, brilliant, and everything in between. Let it be an experience of being and becoming more human and more connected every day. Let us do this individually, and let us do this collectively in service to our aching world. May it be so.